The Neverending Story: Digital Accessibility in Ontario. What is digital accessibility? Websites, tools, and technologies that are designed and developed so that people with or without disabilities can use them without barriers. Accessible design is good design that is beneficial for all users. Encompasses all disabilities that affect access to the web, including auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech, visual. Users can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web and contribute to the web. A common misconception is that web accessibility is about disability, when it's actually about universality. It's about making something that can be used by as many people as possible. People from different environments, on different devices, the elderly, those from different cultural backgrounds, non-English speakers, and anyone with an impaired disability. We need to make our websites easy to use for everyone. The hearing impaired, those with limited mobility, those with reading difficulties, and anyone using handheld devices. Why? By making your content more accessible, that means that more people from all different locations are going to be able to read your information and they will understand it more easily. Accessibility is also a legal requirement. A misconception is that web accessibility is not your problem, when in reality it's everyone's responsibility. We're all in this together, and what you do makes a difference. That's why understanding policies that govern accessibility are very important. In the recent book, Ensuring Digital Accessibility Through Process and Policy, the authors state that successful digital accessibility occurs through process and policy, not just a set of technical standards, and therefore it is necessary to understand the entire context and the entire process. How inaccessible content leads to forms of societal discrimination, technical standards, laws, lawsuits, regulations, the methods for evaluating accessibility, compliance monitoring policies and procedures, and best practices. The power of the web is in the universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. Tim Berners-Lee, W3C Director and inventor of the World Wide Web. Globally, the UN policy on accessibility is followed, and it states that you must enable persons with disabilities to live independently and participate fully in all aspects of life. State parties shall take appropriate measures to ensure to persons with disabilities access on an equal basis with others to the physical environment, to transportation, to information and communications, including information and communications technologies and systems, and to other facilities and services open or provided to the public both in urban and in rural areas. The web is fundamentally designed to work for all people, whatever their hardware, software, language, location, or ability. That means that each website should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Under each of those principles are guidelines and success criteria that help to address those principles for people with disabilities. There are many general usability guidelines that make content more usable by all people, including those with disabilities. In WCAG 2.0, they are only included those guidelines that address problems particular to people with disabilities. This includes issues that block access or interfere with access to the web more severely for people with disabilities. The Web Accessibility Initiative at W3C brings people together from industry, disability organizations, government, and research labs from around the world to develop guidelines and resources to help make the web accessible to people with auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech, and visual disabilities. It's important to remember that good design is accessible design. The Government of Canada has adopted the WCAG 2.0. The WCAG 2.0 states that following these guidelines will make content accessible to a wider range of people with disabilities, including blindness and low vision, deafness and hearing loss, learning disabilities, cognitive limitations, limited movement, speech disabilities, photosensitivity, and any combination of these. Following these guidelines will also often make your web content more usable to users in general. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act, AODA, became law in 2005, with the aim to create a fully accessible province by 2025. The AODA includes rules that all businesses and organizations have to follow to identify, remove, and prevent barriers to accessibility in Ontario. The AODA has specific dates and guidelines for organizations to follow to help progress towards being fully accessible by the 2025 deadline. Although many have said that the AODA has been a step in the right direction, that does not mean that it has gone uncriticized. In the recent critique by Kramer, Functional Accessibility on the Web, How the AODA Fails End Users, it is said that the AODA equates obtainable with accessible, without recognizing the stark contrast between having access to something and being able to keep informed because the content is created with persons with disabilities in mind. Kramer also states that, as noted on the W3C site, even with these conformance levels in place, some persons with disabilities may not be able to access content, as there are a variety of obstacles to accessing web content that is not fixable with the use of these success criteria. W3C encourages web content creators to use the full range of techniques that are available on their website to best implement accessible content on their website while understanding that the use of metadata may assist users that are disabled in finding suitable content. Kramer concludes by saying that the most reasonable positive change to the AODA would be to include a stipulation that while WCAG will still be used for web compliance, it will be necessary for the websites to update to meet the most recent standards. It is not enough to have accessible standards that do not ensure a better quality of life for persons with disabilities. Without proper amendments to guarantee the best practices are being met in the standards, the AODA will be a well-meaning document that does not meet its goal of creating equity in Ontario. One of the ways to make sure that your web content is accessible is to utilize universal design, which is the design and composition of an environment so that it may be accessed, understood, and used without the need for adaptation, modification, assistive devices, or specialized solutions by any persons of any age or size, or having any particular physical, sensory, mental health, or intellectual ability or disability. It should have a user-aware and customizable design, and the 7 principles of universal design are equitable, flexible, simple and intuitive, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low physical effort principle, and size and space for approach and use. It is important to understand the policies that govern accessibility in Ontario, but it's also important to interrogate the ways that it is practiced. In Digital Access for Indigenous Communities, Wong writes that there is little published research on disabled accessibility barriers in Aboriginal Internet users. His paper begins to quantify the barrier by evaluating the home pages of websites maintained by national non-government organizations, which provide online information and services to Aboriginal people. For conformance with Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 1.0, the investigation of a convenient sample of 44 candidates found that 38 websites, that's 86%, failed the most basic level of accessibility. Accessibility is not a metaphor. It is not meant to simply live within the policy document pages and not become a lived experience. These barriers that Wong detected are not insurmountable. It is our responsibility to ensure that web content providing online information or services to Indigenous people conform to Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Research studying the accessibility of ebooks has found that many users find it appealing that it has around-the-clock availability, online access, and no need to physically visit the library. However, they have found that academic ebook platforms tend to lack simple accessibility features that trade publications and e-readers have long offered, such as background contrast adjustment and page reflow. This could be easily remedied if publishers adopted thoughtful approaches to making their content equally accessible to all readers by improving digital publications beyond the poorly scanned print pages. Another study looked at social media applications used by students with disabilities. Many of the problems that they faced are problems that all users face when utilizing these apps, which were technical problems, problems with disorganized layouts, information-related problems, privacy and security-related concerns, and problems with accessibility. With how often social media is used by the youth, I think it should be a priority by all platforms to make accessibility their #1 priority. I decided to have a look at some of the most utilized K-12 resources in Ontario's primary and secondary schools and see how they measure up to WAVE's online accessibility checker. WAVE found that the Google Classroom platform had 0 known errors but had 4 alerts. D2L had 2 known errors and 21 alerts. Edmodo had 5 errors and 7 alerts. Overdrive had the most errors with 11 and 8 alerts. And FreshGrade had 7 known errors and 19 alerts. Clearly, there is still work to be done. Accessibility isn't a target to aim for, it is a goal to aspire to. There's always something that can be more accessible, always another scenario that you have yet to consider. So release that application, publish that article, do your best the first time around, and then learn from mistakes when things don't go well. Digital accessibility truly is a never-ending story. It takes each of our voices to add on to this narrative and ensure that our web content is accessible to the ever-changing needs of our users.